Good afternoon. My name is Will Cox, and welcome to the Incentive 2014 Recap and 2015 Look Ahead. A few housekeeping items before we get started here. If everyone participating in the webinar could please place their phones on mute. We'll have an opportunity at the end of the webinar to answer any specific questions that may arise. Also, we'll be providing my contact information for any follow-up or detailed questions that myself or Hickey Associates could answer for you based on today's webinar. So during today's session, which should cover approximately half an hour, we look to cover modifications and legislative changes that were made during 2014 to major economic development incentives and statutory programs. Also during this webinar, we'll take a look at political changes based on the 2014 November elections, changes to state governments, legislative makeups, as well as a look to 2015 as legislative sessions and new administrations come into place, changes to economic development policy as they unfold through the year and for new programs ahead. Just jumping in, a little introduction and background to Hickey Associates. H&A is a full-service global site selection and public incentive consulting and management firm. We have been assisting companies in the site selection, labor analytics, as well as the process of securing, managing, and administering public incentives for just almost 30 years now. Below side here, some recent awards and recognitions from industry publications ranging from Site Selection Magazine as the editor's choice for incentive data and information, Coronet Global, SAOR, Institute for Professionals in Taxation, IPT, as well as Business Facilities Magazine. A little bit more about H&A, again, founded almost 30 years ago in 1986, is one of the first companies to offer integrated site location and workforce solutions. Today, as a global leader, H&A has grown internationally with projects in over 7 countries, utilizing more than 30 key professionals with site selection experts in other global markets. Below in the slide here, scope of our offices, both domestically in the United States, that we'll get to in a moment, as well as internationally, supporting companies not only with their U.S. Site selection incentive needs, but also internationally as they grow abroad, as well as companies from abroad growing in the United States. A little bit of a U.S. focus on Hickey Associates and some of our office locations spread across the lower 48, allowing the firm to have an intimate understanding of boots on the ground and activities, both within state and local communities as they continue to evolve, address, and support the business needs within their communities. So just jumping into some possible trigger scenarios where economic development incentives, tax credits of the statutory nature may be available to your company. Those include, just going down the list here, facility strategies. Organizations looking to consolidate facilities, relocate facilities, even retain jobs or upgrading existing facilities. There are currently several incentives across local and state governments designed to support these opportunities, some of which we'll touch on today with a real growth in tax credit opportunities for retained jobs. So important to look even within upgrades within existing facility structures, there may be incentives of value to be captured. Obviously, business expansion or job creation are natural fits for statutory job creation, other business expansion, tax credits, grants, and incentives. Also important to consider leasing strategies. Expansion or renewals of lease can trigger other as-of-right or statutory incentives that can either pass through a landlord to the benefit of the company signing a lease or other pass-through strategies. Important to look at leasing opportunities here along with when job retention activities are partnered. And then lastly, continuing to look at energy efficiency strategies for companies committing upgrades, operational costs, different activities to evolve and reduce energy costs to sites. There are continuing energy efficiency incentives, primarily at the state and local level, but continue to also be federal incentive opportunities in the energy efficiency space as well. So just jumping into our election recap and some side-by-side schematics here between the 2014 and 2015 cycles with changes in governor leadership as a result of the 2014 November elections. You will notice, again, as we saw national trends, a growth in Republican presence nationally, with only one Democratic pickup from 2014 to 2015 with the new governors, that being Pennsylvania, and then with three Republican pickups here on the map with Arkansas, Massachusetts, Maryland, as well as a fourth with Illinois. So a little bit of change in the administration map here. Also important to point out big wins in other states that we'll look to in Florida, as well as a change, although not a party change, in states like Texas. So jumping in a little bit more specifically, highlighting a few states with large changes or continuations based on the November elections. Jumping to Florida, Governor Scott did win a very close re-election against former Governor Crist, in which he released a Florida 2020 plan, which supports repackaging of several existing promises that he's made during his first term as governor, as well as a plan to include an additional $1 billion in tax cuts and infrastructure investments to help spur job growth in the state. Along with these extensions, and we'll touch on them later, the legislature in Tallahassee, along with the governor, are actively pursuing extension of some existing programs, as well as building off of the successes of programs implemented during the first administration, including a new sales tax exemption on manufacturing, new to the state, which the governor looks to highlight into his second term. Moving on to the next state, also re-election here of Governor Dan Malloy, who won a close re-election, who signed off on additional new tax credit packages and relief towards the end of his first administration, and look for Governor Malloy to continue to implement new policies in an attempt to strengthen the perception and realities of the Connecticut business climate into the future here, focusing on low-interest loan opportunities as well as support for existing small businesses within the state of Connecticut. Lastly, on our governor spotlights here, focusing in on Texas with Governor Abbott winning the race, replacing outgoing, also Republican Governor Rick Perry, who had a very successful 14-year tenure with quite significant economic development growth under his administration. Prior to Governor Abbott's election win in November, there's been some controversy over the widely publicized Texas Enterprise Fund program regarding a state audit that was released finding problems with the program over its compliance framework and lack of oversight. Changes to the Texas Enterprise Fund under the new Abbott administration are ongoing, with announcements expected as close as the next few weeks on how the program will function outside of the Perry administration, who created the program, and into the Abbott administration. So look to some changes in policy as well as procedural implementation of programs under the new Abbott administration in Texas. Moving along to the state legislative environment under our state governors. Some additional changes between 2014 and 2015 with the November elections, also reflecting the sweep across the nation of Republican pickups and gains here. Overall, there were 1,325 seats, state legislative seats, that turned over during the November election, showing a large change as well as a lot of opportunity for new legislation and new dynamics coming into state capitals across the country. I want to point out a few particular highlights here with a full GOP Republican takeover from Democrat to Republican from 2014 to 2015 in Nevada and West Virginia. We'll focus on that in Nevada here shortly as the state looks to evolve several of their economic development programs. Again, focusing here on legislative chamber changes, Republicans gained majorities in 11 chambers previously held by Democrats, with those two full switchovers in Nevada and West Virginia I mentioned earlier here. Colorado Senate, Maine Senate, Minnesota House, New Hampshire House, New York Senate, New Mexico House, Washington Senate, and then West Virginia as well. Important to highlight here, as these changes are reflected in new policy positions among these chambers and may result in different perspectives on how economic development programs are implemented on the state level. So a little summary of our 2015 partisan makeup, looking to legislative chambers and governors' offices. Legislatures were broken down, 30 Republican, 11 Democrat, and 8 split. We'll notice the state of Nebraska is not included here as they have a nonpartisan legislature. Chamber split, 68 Republican, 30 Democrat. Governor plus of 3 Republican governors here in the November 2014 elections, 31 Republican, 18 Democrat, 1 independent being the state of Alaska. With the state government breakdown, 23 solid Republican, 7 Democrat solid Democratic, 18 divided governments with 1, again, being Alaska independent. Jumping into our 2014 incentive legislation recap, important changes that took place in programs during the year of 2014 that will have impacts on statutory applications, implementation, compliance as we look to 2015. First, jumping in California, Governor Jerry Brown had a pretty active year in economic development, signing into law the California Film and Tax Credit Program, upping the value of the program from $100 million to $330 million a year for 5 years of funding. The new legislation will also end the existing policy of allowing a lottery system that regulates those that qualify for incentives. Applicants will be classified according to new job creation as well as total economic impact created in the state. This comes as a reaction to a number of states, including Nevada, North Carolina, Louisiana, Texas, and others who have modified and updated and made their film tax credit programs more competitive, leaving many film productions completing their work outside of the state of California. This new legislation is intended to bring more of that activity back to their traditional homes in Southern California. The state also announced that new areas have been designated under the Governor's Office of Economic Development, GoBiz, as pilot areas for new employment credits, and these would be hiring credits for businesses that operate in areas of the state with the highest unemployment and poverty. Also would like to highlight that the much anticipated and advertised California Competes program is currently in their 3rd round of funding with over 130 applicants for the 3rd round, looking to allocate $75 million in tax credit funding. The 4th round under the new California Competes program is scheduled to begin at the end of March. And for those interested in this new program and new opportunity for income tax credits in the state of California, we encourage you to contact Hickey Associates for more information on that ongoing application process. Moving along again to Connecticut under the Malloy administration, back in May 2014, Connecticut passed an incentive program to boost job creation, allowing taxpayers to exchange R&D credits that will no longer be useful to them in terms of cash payments within the state, similar to the state's loan guarantee or loan offset program. Qualifying companies must make certain capital investment benchmarks to qualify under this new program that's just coming into effect here in 2015. State of Indiana has passed legislation to further reduce the state's corporate income tax in 2014 with stair steps reductions, the full implementation of reductions. The new tax rate will be lowered from 6.5% all the way to 4.9%, with 2.5% reductions from 2016 to 2022. Moving along to the state of Maine in 2014, also effective May 1, legislation was enacted to restore the full pine tree development zones program, allowing for 100% of credits for years 1 through 5 and 50 through years 6 through 10. It also extended the geographical bounds that could be designated under the pine tree development program. Along with this, Maine also eliminated the super credits for research and development expansion within the state. Moving down to Maryland and passed last year for implementation, July 1, 2015, qualifying institutions may begin applying for RISE zones, Regional Institutional Strategic Enterprise Zone designation. And these give qualifying businesses geographically located in the zone benefits including property tax credits, income tax credits for new employment, as well as priority consideration for the state financial assistance and loan programs already in place. This is similar to, in many ways analogous to, the Startup New York program that it's been widely publicized and we'll touch upon a little bit later here in the presentation. Moving back north with Massachusetts, Governor Patrick passed an $80 million economic development bill specifically targeted for small businesses, providing job training in the state's high-growth industries through loans as well as grant opportunities. Similar to the focus that the state has had on economic development for small as well as small business and emerging technology. This program, however, is intended outside of the traditional tech centers of the state of Boston and Cambridge to areas in western Massachusetts and Worcester. Moving west to Nevada, a lot of activity in the state as far as economic development in 2014. The Assembly passed a new energy rate rider program allowing the state's utilities to reduce costs for loads up to 25 megawatts for electricity for rates from 5 to 10 years. New state authorized opportunities there. Also, Governor Sandoval signed into law incentive package bringing Tesla Motor Company battery factory into the state. A widely publicized deal expected to be worth up to $1.3 billion in economic development incentives. Having that said, with that large program, we are seeing that other state incentive programs will be and are beginning to be effective from the size and scope of the incentive offer to Tesla Motors. So something to stand by as we look to 2015 in the state of Nevada. Moving back east to New Jersey, the state Senate has voted late in 2014 to extend geographic incentives offered under the Grow New Jersey program to Atlantic City, which in recent news has been hit hard by the closure of several of the area casinos. this adds them to the list of Passaic, Patterson, Camden, Trenton as qualifying zones under the Grow New Jersey program for additional income tax credit programs. We'll touch on this again looking to 2015, but continued changes to the Grow New Jersey program. It was an active year under the program in 2014 with the extension of income tax credit benefits under the program going to retained positions for businesses that were investing a minimum capital investment per square foot. That program has been used significantly and taken advantage of by a number of companies, and some changes may be afoot on that program looking to 2015. Just moving to New York here, under recently passed legislation towards the end of 2014, new tax law provides that taxpayers convicted can qualify as a certain tax credits. Also, well advertised, the Startup New York program is now available, allowing companies looking to grow jobs within an academic setting to operate free of state taxes for up to 10 years if they locate in what is now one of 300 tax-free zones set up under the program, with 50 participating SUNY and private colleges under the program. Within the startup program, companies can qualify for tax-free status as long as they partner and are approved through a qualifying university. Some interesting opportunities and perspectives as partnerships begin to form under this program as the majority of the schools have gone through their qualification under the program through the Empire Zone Development Group in Albany. Moving down to the state of Texas, and highlighted here in our governor overview, some changes afoot through the audit conducted at the Texas Enterprise Fund. Also expecting changes under the Emerging Technology Fund have been signaled by Governor Abbott, and changes that were even signaled during the election activities that took place this past November. So again, changes afoot there and expected. Just in 2014, ballot measures from the election that we'd like to highlight, with minimum wage changes taking place in South Dakota, Nebraska, Illinois, Alaska, and Arkansas. Also, bonding extensions, changes in bonding opportunities and provisions in California, Rhode Island, Maine, New Mexico, and New York. Also, several tax changes, states considering extension of gambling activities within the state, and then transportation funding opportunities also passed Louisiana, Massachusetts, Maryland, Texas, and Wisconsin. To give a high-level summary of ballot measures or provisions passed. For more detailed questions on any ballot measures that were passed or failed during the November 2014 election, please recommend following up with Hickey Associates. Also like to highlight quickly 2015 state of play on state minimum wages with the slide here. States covered in orange, states with minimum wage higher than the federal minimum. In the purple pink color, states with minimum wage, same as the federal. In brown, states with no minimum wage law, and then in blue, states with minimum wage laws lower than the federal minimum wage rate highlighted here. Important to point this out, with 9 states in the orange experiencing increase in state minimum wage based to cost of living tied indexes here in 2015. Moving forward to our 2015 legislative look ahead, covering first here New Mexico. Governor Martinez announced her 2016 budget proposal, which included an additional $25 million in non-recurring spending and $25 million in recurring spending for a stronger deal closing fund for economic development projects. This would be similar to the Texas Enterprise Fund program covered earlier. the Quick Action Closing Fund in states like Florida, and closing funds similar to that in several other states, which would be new and extension for the state of New Mexico. The budget proposal also includes additional funding for the existing job training incentive program in the state, as well as efforts for small business hiring and training. As states begin to release their new budget proposals, opportunities and funding levels for economic development programs are starting to come to light here, and will be over the coming weeks as more and more budget proposals from administrations as well as legislators are being released. Moving back again to New Jersey, mentioned the Grow New Jersey program, a very popular program in 2014. Legislation is already being considered in Trenton to put additional scrutiny on the tax credit program, either by reducing or getting rid of the retention benefits under the program, or including additional or new compliance requirements under the program. Under the Grow New Jersey program, mentioned very popular, authorized over $1.29 billion in tax credits. Again, that was from 2013, which were the last released numbers by NJDA on program authorization. Other legislation is also being considered in Trenton to fund and design a manufacturing career program to provide students in different vocational high school settings, as well as the state county college system with skills needed in the manufacturing sector. Again, this was a focus, as we've seen in Florida and other states, on new programs focused on low-skilled manufacturing opportunities within the state. Moving along to North Carolina, there's been a lot of activity in the state over the last few years based on some political changes that took place, with the governor going on record that North Carolina currently does not have the tools they need to recruit major business, and really both the governor as well as the legislature are making economic development a priority in 2015, not only looking to reform existing programs, including the very popular Jobs Development Investment Grant Program, or JDIG program, focusing on opportunities in automotive manufacturing as they've gone on record. Also looking at new small business support opportunities through crowdfunding mechanisms that are authorized and implemented with the state, as well as making changes to a tax system with a single-factor tax system based on sales to improve business opportunities within the state. Some controversy over the single-factor tax structure, but changes that will be much debated during the North Carolina legislative session that is just beginning here in the state. Also, there's been a lot of conversation over reauthorization, extension, and re-implementing of the state's film tax credit program. So look to a lot of changes within North Carolina as they look to continually strengthen as a leader in economic development policy. Moving along to Pennsylvania, legislation is gaining traction in Harrisburg, introduced by state senators to increase oversight in existing state tax credit programs. The current bill, the Economic Development and Fiscal Accountability Act, looks to make awards for tax credits and grants a post-performance structure, or require the business to recruit and retain the qualifying jobs and positions before they receive any associated credits. There's a larger trend that we're starting to see around the country, with 9 states implementing or having considered some level of post-performance tax credit or grant award, including the District of Columbia. So again, a trend that we'll look to continue to see as states look to support economic development opportunities and job creation, as well as maintain a scrutiny for taxpayer allocated funds. Moving along to Washington State, and on a similar message as Pennsylvania, Washington lawmakers are proposing legislation to place additional job retention requirements, specifically on aerospace companies receiving tax credits. There's a little bit of a function of the large tax credit package announced for Boeing back in 2013, widely considered to be the largest ever economic development package at roughly $8.7 billion in tax breaks through 2040. Legislators, after announcements of jobs being relocated by Boeing outside of the state of Washington, are looking to put new, stricter requirements as to the job retention and creation requirements tied to any future tax breaks within the aerospace industry. Again, a function of increased scrutiny, of increased performance requirements among legislators out there and government officials, as well as scrutiny on the larger mega economic development deals from Tesla to Boeing among the state legislative community. So that, in summary, ran a few minutes over our current 30-minute time slot here, but we'd like to now open it up to the floor for any questions on specific programs, election results, new opportunities for programs in 2015. We'd like also to let the audience know that there is a copy of this document on our website for those to review, and can provide a copy of this slide presentation after today's call for any of those that would like it. So I guess without further ado, any specific questions for the good of the group that can be answered here today?
This is George Harbin. Can you hear me?
Hey, George, how you doing today?
Fine. What are y'all seeing as far as, and you might have covered over this, but specific incentive reviews and incentive, just pulling back or making it more difficult for companies to, to secure incentives? What are y'all seeing out there? Is that a trend you're seeing in a lot of states, or just a couple, like I think you said Washington?
Yeah, thanks for that question, George, and good point. And I think it's a continued trend that we're seeing, specifically over a lot of your grant programs, and even extending into some of your income tax credit programs. Additional compliance and oversight requirements, both in the information that is required in reporting from Social Security numbers on specific employees, home addresses, is increasing. One thing that we're also seeing a trend is that the term of compliance for some of your larger incentive awards is also increasing. So in other words, the retention requirement on an employee in many cases for your larger values is increasing. So I think that is a trend that we are seeing nationally, as well as in a lot of our local communities, with increased compliance requirements on these economic development incentives, which is critically important for companies to realize the full values and awards over the life of an incentive agreement. So thanks for that question there, George. Any other additional questions? And again, I've got my direct contact information here on the page for any of those that would like to follow up after the call. But any other additional questions for the good of the group? Seeing none, I'd like to thank everyone for joining today's call. Again, would like to direct everyone to the Hickey Associates website for additional information on economic development programs as they continue to evolve. Would also like to direct those on the line to the H&A Twitter account, which also does follow trends and changes in economic development, not only domestically in the United States, but internationally. Thank you so much for joining today's call, and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day.